If your name is on it, you're accountable for it, whether you read it, whether you wrote it, whether you had AI do it or not. You're still signing your name on it, which means you take credit for it. You don't get to say the excuse, oops, AI wrote that, not really me. I think that's a cop out, and I don't think we should do that. Engine, if you're in favor of this, you're in a place where you're going to learn how to do it. If you are anti this, maybe we'll have some good conversations and you can see where are the places to use it and not use it. This is something that I believe that is worthwhile. I believe it's worth doing things well with this and finding a way where it augments you and supports you in what you're trying to accomplish, not as a replacement for your own thinking or that your voice doesn't matter. So I think there's a lot of value in trying to capture what you're trying to say, the way that you'd like to say it to the audience that you're talking to. That's what we're going to try to do here today. The use of AI in writing, right? So the idea here is it can write just about anything. And oftentimes what we do is we ask it to do something for us, we read it, and then we change it and we change it again and change it again. And there's times I wonder whether or not it's meaningfully helpful for us when we do it that way. And I think there's a better world when that happens. We can do things better than that, other than just rehashing our own thinking. Just write it if that's the case, or fix the tool. And I'm really into building systems. So that's what I would love for you all to do, is to build this engine that will do some of the writing for you or get closer to what you want to send faster. Um, and when you have a writing system, a voice file, or this engine of sorts, if you would, it will do better. It will be more on target with the way you sound. It will phrase things the way you want to, and you can tell it what not to do. And so you'll get different inputs, and it's worth testing it. You can try out a model. You can ask it to write something for you, giving it almost no context, and then you can give it a voice file. You can also try one that just has some context of what you normally do, and it tries. It tries to get closer to what you want. But if you can give it more specific directions, it'll do better. All of this is driven by the fact that these models are trained on everybody's writing. Lots and lots of writing over history. I mean, one of the things that makes me laugh is that everybody gets mad about the M dash because it's AI. The reason it's an AI is because it's where a ton of writing has used M dashes over time. So now everyone feels like you can't use M dashes because it'll make it look like AI. I mean, sure, take out the M dashes if you don't use them. I never used them, but I did use the single dash often. And I use ellipse and I use parentheses, and I want that to show up in my writing because that's how I write. So good. Tell it what you like, and then also tell it what not to use, so you don't have to edit it out every time. What we're going to do today is not just be talked at. You get enough of that in day to day. I'd love for you, if you're in a place and you can work alongside, I would love for you to do that. That's what these are for. I will, in the participation guide, there will be copy and paste prompts. I will put them into the Slack chat. If they're not too long, sometimes they get cut off, so we have to go back to the document, but they're there. If you're not in a place where you can actively work, then please, yes, listen along, ask questions, engage, and then later take a little time. It doesn't take long. If you're not having me explain it along the way and you just kind of ran through the document, you could get through these prompts in 15, 20 minutes at the most, assuming, depending on how much time you spend gathering some of your resources. But then it'll give you something to work with, and then use it over time and it will get better. Okay. So we're going to be I'm using Claude. A lot of this applies to any other tool as well. If you're a Gemini person, you should be able to do that. If you're a GPT person, you should be able to do something similar. The exact screens will be a little bit different, but the concepts are the same. All right. What we're going to drive this from is where you've already captured your writing. So there's a lot of this that already happens. If any of you are in any virtual meeting these days, there's like 17 note takers in every one of them, right? Well, those often have transcripts, and you can choose to get those transcripts and capture those to be able to get your voice. Now, that's not your written voice so much as it is some of your personality and the way that you speak. We write differently than we speak, but you can grab it and you can use those transcripts. I use that frequently to capture some of my approaches, my frameworks, my mannerisms of speech. Those are helpful. The other thing is how you respond to email and the context of those. Who are you writing to? I write to vendors differently than I do to clients, differently than I do to colleagues and friends, differently than I do to unsolicited email or whatnot. And so there are different form factors, and your voice can learn those things. It can pick up on the context and then choose the right elements. So by pulling these different sources, it's good. You don't have to spend a ton of time curating. You just have to grab a bunch, give it to AI, and ask it to figure a bunch of that stuff out. So we're going to talk about the day. I actually dug back into some blog posts that I used to write on Medium and some things back some years back. So I've actually pulled those in as well. And I'll show you what that looks like when we do it. So first step is for you, while I'm kind of going through some of this stuff, I'd love for you to grab some resources. It does not have to be super extensive, but start finding a couple of emails that maybe you wrote to someone. Maybe it's your boss, maybe it's a coworker, maybe it's somebody who works for you. Maybe there's one for a friend. Um, we're not going to show them on the screen. So like I chose to curate some of mine because I don't want to show any of my clients' information on the screen that gets recorded and shared. So I've curated, so I have a little bit more of a controlled experience here. But if you're doing this on your own, you're not screen sharing, you're not recording, feel free to use these and how you want, how you feel comfortable. One caveat, if it is work information with confidential information and you try to give it to an AI to process and your company doesn't allow that, don't do that, right? Like by sending it, that could be an issue. And so don't don't do that. Find something that you feel that you have the rights to send, your own writing, your own thoughts, that kind of stuff. But make sure that you're abiding by whatever your company policies are with the use of AI and information. Um, okay, so we're going to grab a few. It could be documents that you've published. It could be things that you've brainstormed, meeting transcripts, whatever it might be. And then we're going to extract the voice file. Okay, so I'm going to paste this in if it will fit. It does not fit. It's 2,100 characters. So you're going to need to go into the document. And before you paste it, let me help you get it set up in Cowork or in Claude, whichever one you're using. So I'm going to go to a new task. Couple of things about models. If you all are using Claude and you've noticed the new model of Fable has come out, Fable 5, really impressive, not necessary for this, and it will use a ton of your tokens. So maybe don't do that. Frankly, I think Sonnet is quite good. The only thing I will say that is if you pull a lot of context data, meaning long transcripts or things like that, like I took a 2.5 hour workshop transcript and ran this in here, filled up the context super fast. So Sonnet 4.6 wasn't great for that. Opus would be better because it just has more space for it to think through these things. But if you're just testing it or you're just getting started, totally fine to work with Sonnet. I think Haiku is a little bit too transactional to get meaningful context here. But I would say Sonnet at either medium or high level would do quite well for you. Okay.
I'm in VS Code. Is that okay?
Okay, that's even better, right? Like you'll have even more access. That's my favorite space to be, but not everybody gets comfortable in the terminal. So in VS Code, it's even easier. You just go open up your terminal. You create your folder for any of this. If you already have a workspace, you can just add this in there. Totally fine. Okay, what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to start with some of the basics. You can start this with its own project. You can go into projects, you can create a new project, and I'm not going to set the whole thing up, but you can start from scratch. You name a folder. The folder structure that I have is pretty straightforward here. Let's see if I get into the one that I had here. I'll show you on my local computer what I set up. So it started as just, y'all can see my Mac Finder window, right? I'm going to go with yes. So I just named it AI Voice Engine. And then I created some folders underneath by just like right clicking a new folder. And Greg, your question of will it take context into account? Yes. So the output can have different references for how to use it. And you can also prompt it to say, write this through my voice folder for short responses, or it'll often pick it up and it is quite accurate with that. So it could be for LinkedIn, for email, for Substack, for whatever you're wanting to do for customer responses to client responses. Yeah, it can have a nuance for that as well. Then you're going to take this prompt right here, and you're going to copy and paste all the way down to where it says produce the file, then stop, no commentary, no questions. You're going to paste this in, and you can do this in a couple of ways. So what I did was I preloaded my folder with some data. So I have email drafts, I have old blogs. I don't have any in the email drafts. I have old blog postings. I didn't put anything in my proposals, and I grabbed some transcripts and I just dragged them over. I made copies of them. They can just be text files. You can download them as docx if you want, if they're Word documents or Google Docs. That is a way to make it very contained. If you have it connected already to your Google Drive or your Google Docs account or your Granola or your Zoom, you can prompt it to go and pull a recent transcript. I do that with Zoom and Granola often. And you can prompt it and say, hey, I'm going to, as the input to this prompt, see how here it says my samples. You just erase this part of it in your prompt and just say my samples are attached, or and my samples pull from Granola 3 recent transcripts, or pull from Zoom 3 recent transcripts. Or use the local folders that I've added into this project. And you can write this prompt and then you can just copy and paste them if you want to. Those are also options. Okay. And then yeah, so all of those, there's lots of different ways for creating the documents. You just need them in the workspace. Once it's in the workspace, you can give it the prompt and say, go look at these files and process this. Okay. All right. What we're going to look at here is I'm going to go up a bit further. So I did this a little while ago. My Granola, for whatever reason, this version, my desktop version, which I don't use very often, Granola and Slack didn't connect. I have those in my Cloud Code version, but it created, I ran the prompt and it created my voice.md file. So here's what mine did. I posted this in. I actually tried to see if it would connect, pull 5 emails that I wrote in since last year, look at my Slack messages and review Granola transcripts, exclude any PII, and do not include any quotes or references to the individual groups that I work with. Those are the only things that I was kind of doing from there. Good. So once you get those in, like just to give you an example, like I have, this was a Medium post I wrote back in 2018. I just copy and pasted it and created it as a text file in that same folder. And I just put it into old blogs. And I just wrote a text file and then saved it there. And then I looked at some of my old ones, my other ones that I had on Medium for my different posts. So I just grabbed those and made some copies of them. Doesn't have to be perfect, and it will get better over time. Okay, while yours is running, so hopefully yours is running now, or most of you have something running. I'm going to open mine up. It's going to create it within this space. If you're using Cowork, it's going to save it in that folder that you created. If you're using Claude Code, you need to tell it where you want to put it, or it will put it somewhere. For the most case, if you're using VS Code in the terminal, you can make sure that it puts your voice file either in the root folder or wherever you'd like it, whatever makes sense. And you just want to save it as a markdown file. And it will save it in the structure that we gave it. We gave it a couple of different things to look for. So mine's gone through a couple of iterations. So if I go back to the prompt we asked it for to do is we want it to be my voice in one sentence. We want to check that first sentence. That's a big part of this. And then it's going to talk about how I write sentence length and rhythm. It's going to talk about tone. It's going to identify patterns, words to avoid, how something can go wrong. AI does a really good job when you give it boundaries of what good looks like and what bad looks like. It's going to try to find some patterns that it could use to reference. It can give it some rewrites, and then when in doubt, what to do. So that's the structure we're starting with. It may not survive all of your edits over time. That's okay. This is meant to get you from not doing this to doing this, and then you'll make it better over time. Okay. So what I got back, in this first one, I guess it actually keeps updating it, but because I've now given it it's giving me different details. So Greg, you were asking, does it know how to handle the context? So it's already added in how I write. This first sentence, this I want you all to look at and make sure that it sounds like what you want. If not, you can just edit it and change it. It's totally fine. This is very much of how I tend to write. I don't love a ton of filler and fluff in it. I want it to get there. I want to get to the point. If I'm teaching, I want to give kind of a warm encouragement and then the opportunity to give some constructive feedback on it. But it's taken all of what I've written and it's looked at the different forms. So short form for emails or messages. These are definitely phrases that I'm guilty of. By the way, I did this with someone else who went across a bunch of transcripts and it identified a bunch of verbal tics that he doesn't like, but it was saying, hey, this is how I talk. And I said, you can take that out if you don't want it to show up in your writing. So now he's got AI making his writing better than what he would normally do when he did it on his own, because he always wanted to work on taking some of those things out. And it was just always an effort. And so now AI is going to help him do that as well. It then has long forms. And then there's some shared elements. So this idea for me, this is my form, concrete before abstract. Um, one of the things that I have coached people a lot on is this idea that most of communication is about making sure that you can understand and make your message accessible to the audience you're talking to, which even in a one-on-one is how do you make it easy for the next person to understand what you're saying? So don't overcomplicate it. So to me, concrete is easier for most people to get than the abstract. I guess that's just how I communicate. So it captured that. It has elements around my punctuation. I definitely am guilty of smiley faces, of parentheses, of ellipses, all that kind of thing. That type of stuff. There's tone. Um, there's elements of humor in here, openings and closings, patterns that I use. So this, you may not get this verbose the first time through. So I've actually given this once, and then I gave it some additional documents, and it went a bit further.
Hey,
So
Will,
yeah,
I have a question. I mean, is it cool if I ask a question?
please, absolutely.
Okay, yeah. So just at the top of this call, I've been thinking about doing something similar to this, and this is actually pretty amazing in terms of what you went about. But I'm going to put a link in the chat.
Mhm.
Have you looked at the MailChimp, their style guide? which is how they organize it, but it's all available on GitHub. What I was thinking of is that to handle the
Yeah.
context for each one of these different areas, I would break down my writing across of maybe a simplified version of
Mhm.
this. It's seeming like your thing is already kind of breaking it down like that, but did you give it some guidance to break down the different sections, or you were just kind of trusting that it would rather than giving it an exact
Yeah, that's a great question. I did not give it anything beyond this. So
got it. Okay.
what I've started with is I want you to be able to try to give me a summary and then elements that I care about, tones, patterns, things I do, things I don't do. Over time, and I've been using writing voice files for months now, maybe longer. I have had it create and evolve and change some of these, but the one that I'm showing you in here, this was generated an hour ago, an hour and a half ago. So this is truly from the prompts that you all are seeing. I run these all before the sessions just to make sure that what I'm writing in the environment that I'm about to show you is very relevant for someone who may not have had 6 months of evolution of their voice file in my system. That's not helpful for you all. I want you to see what you can get. So this is just from today by using Sonnet thinking at high level. This isn't even using Opus or using Fable. This is right off the shelf. So you can get pretty darn far for what you're talking about, Greg. I love that idea, though, of if you see an example where someone's thinking through questions that you hadn't considered. Like, let's say that you often like to engage in public forum discussions that are controversial, and you want to be careful of your brand and positioning while still being able to carry an opinion and allow for other people to have a differing opinion, respectfully discussing that topic. You could absolutely choose to give it a prompt of, this is an important way that I want to be true to myself. And I want you to check me because sometimes I get fired up and I want to say things that I shouldn't write. I might need to get it out of me, but I don't ever want to publish it. And I want you to check these things for me. And you can add that to your voice file as well. Doesn't mean it'll be perfect, but it might give you a little bit of a pause or a restructuring.
So you're saying that's like using this voice file as an editorial,
Yeah.
as an editor, not just as a copywriter.
Correct. This gets into sort of the principle that I think we were talking about a little bit before things got started. Um, is that I think there's some controversy in the use of AI in writing. And I'm going to take a bit of a detour here, and hopefully you'll find this helpful as well, because there is some real conversation of when do you use this and how do you use this. And if you just give it if it's something that doesn't, it's not super important to represent yourself genuinely. Let's say you're responding to a vendor and you're just trying to give them a transactional response back. Tomorrow's date is whatever. Don't overthink it. Either write it or have AI auto draft it, and then you can just review and send it. Or in Gmail, it actually will almost auto draft. You can just like tab that and say, yes, great. You've read it. It makes sense. You agree. Fine. Well, let's say you're talking to someone on LinkedIn or a comment. The people get really upset with AI posts on LinkedIn. I use a lot of dictation software. I use a cool tool called Pipit, but I also use Whisperflow. So I talk my ideas out, and there's plenty of filler words in there. That's not how I want it to be posted, but my ideas are there. And I just find it faster. So I will start by speaking out my response. And then if it's a longer one, there are times that I will, or let's say it's a LinkedIn post or a blog post or whatever it once might be, I will talk out all those ideas and then give it to run through my voice prior to giving me a draft of what I'm going to consider and review. And it will find some of my things. It will organize my thoughts. Sometimes it will pull in, now that I have it attached to like my second brain, it'll pull in ideas or references or links that I could say, hey, remember to pull up that YouTube video link that I saw from so-and-so in here. I don't have to go find it. I can just talk it out and it will actually pull the reference in for me. So those are ways that it augments me. I find it less valuable to just say, write a response to this without you having added any substance to it yet. I think that's an unfortunate approach, kind of the auto response to things that are not just because it's in your voice, it's not your thinking. And I don't think that's an awesome use of things. If you're trying to represent yourself or your brand or your company in some way, I think there's some risk if you take yourself out of the loop. If you choose to do so, I think to me, my position, once again, it's just an opinion of one, is that if your name is on it, you're accountable for it, whether you read it, whether you wrote it, whether you had AI do it or not. You're still signing your name on it, which means you take credit for it. You don't get to say the excuse, oops, AI wrote that, not really me. I think that's a cop out, and I don't think we should do that. So that's my position on it. But I think as a thought partner, as a ghostwriter of sorts, here's all my ideas, my brain dump, please fix it. As a copy editor, I think is a great use as well. Hey, here's what I'm thinking. Can you cut this down by 50% while still maintaining the spirit of what I'm saying? Great. That's super helpful. AI has a tendency to make it 50% longer, so you have to sometimes tell it to be shorter. So hopefully that helps. But yeah, I think you could use it for a lot of those type of things. Okay, now there's this next part, refine it. This is the journey that I think too many people skip. And so if you're not running it right now, please make sure you get past at least this step, because what you're going to get is if you just run it once and you don't read over what it has and you don't opine on what it's saying about you, it's doing a decent job, but you can make it better. You can meaningfully improve this by just giving it some notes. So like if you see a section, let's say this part right here. So I'm just going to try this out. This is live. We'll see what happens. Punctuation. Okay. I'm just going to put this. I'm going to use my dictation software. In the punctuation section, it didn't pick up that I often use a single dash or the 3-dot transition as I trail off in sentences. I would be okay with my writing doing that. Can you add that into the voice.md file? Okay. So then you're just talking it out. I'm not trying to prompt anything perfectly. I'm just going to send that over to it and see what it can do. But I want you all to find something, and that's kind of what we're talking about. In the first sentence, is it right? Oops, sorry. Um, are the patterns right? Are there any things that it's saying that you do that you don't want it to do for you? And then give it a suggestion of what to fix. And it will rewrite this. It'll edit the file right in place. And just because you're done with it once doesn't mean you have to stop editing it. You shouldn't. That's one of the things that I've told this to many of people. They use AI, they get impressed by the magic initially, and then they get unimpressed when it becomes too general because they keep using it and they're getting used to just that form of input, but they're also not telling it what it's getting right and what it's getting wrong for what you're trying to do. They're not improving it, which means that your experience is just going to degrade. But AI likes to get the feedback. So give it the feedback and improve it. So here it's now added some things. Let's see. All right. Ellipses, the single dash to trail off when a thought deliberately doesn't land or when I'm handling. Yeah, great. Perfect. So it added that in. And you could keep doing that. You can keep doing that in this session, but you can also do it. The pattern I look for is when you've asked it to do something and you got something back and you didn't like it. And that's what we're actually going to get into in just a little bit. You'll see down here in prompt 4, I'm going to skip for a second because we're going to come back to prompt 3 in just a second. But in prompt 4, a draft will come back that's not quite you, right? And so now what I want you to do is I want you to do something like, here's the draft. Here's what I wanted to say, or here's what I actually sent. That's the one of my favorite ones is, hey, I took your draft. Here's what I actually sent. Now look at it, add these either as memories or updates into my voice file so that that you better represent me going forward. So anytime you're editing something that it gives you, you can fix it, but then tell it what you fixed. And if there's a why behind it, I didn't like this phrasing, I prefer this, or this felt too condescending, or felt out of character of who I am, or put my client or put my position with my client at risk, but the way that it was speaking, or I'm uncomfortable being so assertive or so passive or whatever. Tell it why and let it improve. This is true with not just voice files, but with skills that you use, workflows, things like that.
We're gonna have some time.
Totally get it. The journey that I did in mine, let me close this down so you can see. I did a prompt where I just told it to check my emails, and I tried to have it do Slack and Granola. That didn't work. So it only had my emails to begin with. And then I went and added a bunch of the documents. So I had all of these different pulled actual transcripts and blogs, and just copy and pasted those in. The other thing that you might try to do this is for all of you, if you've been using, I mean, assuming that we've written things in the past, go really far back prior to when you started using AI to edit and review things. I was going back into 2018, 2019, 2020 for some of these documents because I knew that I hand typed all of these things. And so then it was going to be my form of writing. And so that can be a source that can kind of get back to what you were doing, maybe when you had a bit more time to sit and write, or that was the expectation is that you were writing every one of these because you didn't really have a choice. So, but yeah, that's good. And Heather, you can always come back to it. You can drop new things in and ask it to refresh this.
Yeah, I guess another question I have then is if I do that and I create an entire new chat, right, or a new task in Cowork, is it going to pull from my memory? Like, I don't, if let's say I don't want it to look at any of these transcripts, right, and I want to redo this,
Yeah,
should I just tell it, hey, don't reference any of my other things I've attached?
that's a great question. So you can do this in a few ways. One, you could come into the same project. And if you go into projects and then in here, it has all of this information and it's available. And it'll have something that might have it in memory. So if you want it to have some reference, come back into this same project and then just ask it to do it again, like refresh this with all the new content that I've added or with reapply this. That's one option. If you want to get rid of the things that you've added and not use it at all, then you could just create a new project space, a new folder, and not put any of those things in there and put your new stuff in there and go from there.
Will, have you found that having a larger corpus of your writing improves it, or is there a point at which you probably have enough, and adding anything else is really just a rounding error.
Yeah, I've done this with someone who pulled like 2,200 hours of transcript meetings, and there is absolutely diminishing return. And so there's a point at which our patterns, and this is my amateur psychology view, is that humans, like, we don't change all that much. And so the only thing I would say is that if you have different form factors or experiences that you didn't include before that you want it to know, let's say you've never done a TEDx talk and you finally did one and you wrote up what you were going to say and it was scripted and you want to bring that in because of a particular purpose. Great, do that. That might be new, even though you've done 50 different emails and transcripts or hundreds or whatever of meetings. It's something meaningfully new and different. Great. Maybe you had you're doing some improv and you're capturing your improv type conversation. You want to see what that looks like. What are the prompts, your responses, your mode of operating off the cuff? That could be something different. But at some point, there is going to be diminishing returns because we're all habitual people. We have mannerisms, we have speech patterns, we have writing patterns. They just don't change that much unless something happens. Either you went training, you practiced, you got feedback, you got coaching, something evolved. After those things, clear a bunch of that out. If you want to represent yourself new, the neat thing is you can start from scratch and just do it again. Like, hey, you take a 6-month writing course on how do you write, how do you articulate yourself, and you don't want it to come back from things 6 years ago. Awesome. Get rid of it. Only use the new stuff, and you move forward with that. That help? Cool. Yeah. So Heather, to your point, if you want to clear it out, you could. That would absolutely work fine. You could start a new project if you don't want it to have the history. You can also go in and like remove all of the things, delete the file, and just give it the prompt again. And so in the project, it has access to the files, but it won't necessarily load them up unless you ask them to, or you give it instructions in here of what to do. So in a cowork, your instructions, you can tell it, read my voice file before you and review this, which is what we're about to get to. Is putting in the instructions. So prompt 2 was like the loader piece. And this is my suggestion of what we were doing was creating a project to initially create the voice file. This prompt 2 is about creating a new project that loads up the prompt file. And then you could use that for everything else. You could add that into any other existing projects that you have. And what you would do is you would just you can open up the file itself. You can download it locally. You can move it over. It all depends on how you want to use this. I'm going to just take this in here. This is prompt 2, and I will paste it into chat as well. It looks like that one fits. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add it to the instructions in here. And so what we're saying is, I actually don't love this. You're my writing partner. I don't like I have a tendency to hold that over, but you don't need to do that anymore. You don't have to tell it to do that. That was kind of, it's a legacy thing. You don't need to tell it the role anymore. We used to always say, tell it you're an expert at this. The problem with telling it it's an expert, it's going to act like an expert even when it's wrong. So you don't need to do that anymore. So you can tell it 2 files live in the project, my voice, how I sound, and an anti-slop, which we have not created yet, which we'll get to in just a minute. And then what I never sound like. For any writing task in the project, read them. Great. So what we're in essence doing, it's a little bit easier to read it here. Read the voice file. After drafting, check against these and against the anti-slop file, and then fix every violation before you show me what you wrote. Don't invent facts, names, numbers, or quotes. If you're missing something, ask. You could also go further, is to say, if you're missing something, put a placeholder and tell me what it is, and I can fill it in, right? Like you can have it work as an editor. That part can work as well too. By the way, that's really good if you're doing like interview prep or talking about your work stories and you want it to help you draft those, but you don't want it to make up stuff. Hey, help me write a good star story and put the pain here, but don't add any numbers. Just put placeholders and tell me what I should get. Oh, a metric on X. That can be really helpful. So you put that in there. And then every time we do a new chat, it's going to read these instructions. We're about to create that. That's the next one. But now that it's in the prompt, once you've created it, it'll start using it. So prompt 3, this is fun. There's a bunch of tells on whether something is AI or not. This will be updated. There's a few different ways out here. There's like a GitHub repo called Humanize. It'll try to humanize, and it might, I haven't looked in the depths of this, but this is a nice Wikipedia article. I'll send you the link to it, but it's also in the guide. And this is a place that has a lot of different examples of what it looks like. So examples, structures, canned emphasis, and it just kind of goes on and on and on. Promotional and advertisement like languages, vague attribution. So this can give you something to start with. High density of AI vocabulary words that can be helpful. So what I've done is created a prompt in here where you can just read this page and create a document. What I would suggest if you're going to use this regularly, like once a month, come and refresh this. And then you run that prompt and it will create one for you. It'll create the anti-slop document. If it can't pull the Wikipedia, if your setup won't get there, you can always just copy and paste the whole page into it. One way to do that is on Wikipedia. Of the top, there is a print version under tools. Don't download the PDF. That'll use a lot of tokens. You can just do a printable version, and then it will load it with a bunch of the stuff. And then you can just do like a Control A, Control C. So Control A will copy everything or select everything, and then copy it, and then you can paste it into the prompt. It's long, 79 pages, but this is what will eat up a lot of your context if you do that. So make sure that you're okay with compacting, which is fine. There's probably a more simple way, but this is a fast, or like, sorry, there's probably a more concise way to do this. I saw just today on LinkedIn, somebody was posting, they have a whole list of words that they don't like used. Great. I just figure this is something that a whole bunch of community all around the world is updating on a regular basis, and I'm fine with just using that. I don't need to overthink it. And so then you create it. And then the slop file gives a whole bunch of details. Rules derived from Wikipedia, words to avoid, banned sentence patterns. So you'll see some things here. Structures that you don't want to use. Cross-check against my voice. M-dash. List and published writings. So these are a couple of details that it's cross-referencing against my voice file. These are the draft checklist. So it's created it all for me. Now, whenever I write something, it will go through these things. So if I go back to this project and just say, write an email to everyone that attended my lightning lesson today, thanking them for coming and hoping that they will send a reply using their newly created voice.md. Oh, and remind them to sign up for my Slack channel and my workshop in a few weeks. Okay, let's see what it does. All right, so while this is running, let me make sure I've covered the things I wanted to cover. So we've done the refine it. We've given it a home, which you can either create as a new project or just put your instruction in. We're testing it now with the slop, right? Or actually, that was what we were doing then. Tell it the documentation, Wikipedia. Teach it when it misses. We talked about that. Oh, yeah, this is sort of your homework. As you're doing this, like I said at the beginning, give it some new content to use until you feel like it's really on point for you, or give it some improvement as well. And Greg, to your point, try it with different channels, or ask it to divide your voice of like, hey, I want you to create a voice for my voice email or my voice LinkedIn or my voice Substack, or my clients or whatever it might be. So you can have it do that as well. My structure, this was written from how my system is currently running, that I've been doing this for a long time, like for months now. So I have a core voice file that all of my voice files point to. All of them say read this first. I have an anti-slop constitution file like the one we just created. And then I have a LinkedIn, email, coaching, client, and newsletter. And so this is what it's pulled from. And I do this within my Claude Code setup. And occasionally it ignores it because LLMs will occasionally not follow the rules. So I'll tell it like, stop delivering me stuff you haven't run through the voice file. And I have to remind it to do it again, and then I have to wait a little bit. But the goal is that I can dictate out what I want in an email and have it drafted. And then I just log into my Gmail, go to my drafted folder that already has the person. It has all the different links. It has most of the message and the context and the links to the various documents I've created. I can review it and send it most of the time, pretty close, which I like. I mean, I still make edits because I'm in case I want to change my tone, or maybe I had a conversation with someone a little bit different, but it's pretty close. It gets me a lot more there. I very rarely send without adding something, but I don't always fix every one of them because we get busy, we get lazy. So, all right, let's see. Nicole, done. Anti-slop is saved in index. Good.
Yeah, I just thought it was funny with what it came back with.
Yeah. I love it. And Greg, I like your idea as well. So Greg's idea is you could create a cron job to run this. For those of you that aren't setting up sort of these workflows, you can absolutely you can do this within Cowork. You can schedule things. You could have it run once a month to say once a month, run this prompt and update this file. And then you would just need to add it into that project or where you want it to be. Or if you're doing that on your computer, if you're running the computer, you can use Windows scheduled task. If you're a Windows user, you can use launched in Mac, or you can use cron on Linux and Mac if you want to use those as well. And they also have scheduled task there as well, but those require some cloud compute and a place to put it. So it's a little bit more complicated, but not that hard.